Towards the end of 2017, shortly after release for the final wave of the DLC for Breath of the Wild, we got word that Nintendo was already hard at work on the next Legend of Zelda. At E3 2019, we got confirmation that they were developing the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and now here we are, April 2023, it's been over half a decade, and we're about 5 weeks away from the release for Tears of the Kingdom. And just last week, we finally got our first somewhat extended look at the gameplay for the game. And we learned quite a bit about the abilities, and these abilities are impressive, and it definitely does show that there was a lot of work that was put behind them, and they have a lot of amazing applications for Tears of the Kingdom, but I feel there's still a lot more they haven't showed us. They've worked on this game for over 5 years with Breath of the Wild as a base after all. I think it's very clear that Nintendo's still hiding a lot about this game. They've been fairly quiet about this game until recently. But what is it they are hiding? What is it that's yet to be revealed about Tears of the Kingdom? Well, that's what we're talking about today.
Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today we're talking about what Nintendo's still hiding about Tears of the Kingdom. Now before we jump into things, let me first briefly mention that we are aiming to hit 25,000 subscribers by the time Tears of the Kingdom comes out on May 12th. We've gained some ground, but we still have a fair bit of a way to go. So if you enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, because then we might just make it. So getting straight into this little discussion on what Nintendo may be hiding. The first thing that I think is the most obvious is a lot of underground exploration. I think this is going to be a major component to the game. I think the idea with Tears of the Kingdom is that yes, we have the sky, but there will also be the underground. It'll be a bit of a contrast. I think it's going to be a recurring motif throughout our adventure. Now, some are arguing that the caves we saw on the Sky Islands deconfirm caves on the surface. I don't agree, and the reason why is because we have seen a Hinox chasing Link in a cave from the previous trailer. The Hinox is not a Sky Island creature. This is something we've seen throughout the surface of Hyrule. So I think the implication here is that cave is either on the surface or a bit below. Going beyond that though, the teaser trailer, which from what we can tell takes place before the events of everything in Tears of the Kingdom, is underground. There are no Sky Islands that have become apparent yet, so I'm pretty sure at some point or another we're going to be able to explore that. There is no cutscene in Breath of the Wild that we can't explore at some point or another. Now some of these areas may have changed due to time and decay, but we can still explore them. So I think the same should probably apply with the opening teaser for Tears of the Kingdom. We will be able to explore this underground area. But there's also this one shot we saw from the previous trailer where it was this gray, large, cavernous area with stalactites suggesting an underground cave that has big mushrooms and particles in the air, and extra mouse-infested bokoblins and Lizalfos. While it's technically possible there could be some Sky Islands that have large cavernous areas that could be just like this, the fact that there are Lizalfos and bokoblins and Malice, all things we've seen from the surface and probably below, implies this is more likely an underground area. So I think there's most likely extensive underground exploration. To what extent? That's hard to say. However, we did see that on the minimap there are these 3 different numbers that mark where we are on the different axes, and potentially they can go between negative 9,999 to positive 9,999. And considering that we only could get close to about 2,000-ish, there's quite a bit of elevation left to be seen, and maybe also with the underground as well in the opposite direction. But on the note of the sky, how high can we go? We haven't seen the vertical limit yet. Maybe it is truly 9,999, and when we're there, what do we see? Do we see stars? There's still a lot there we haven't seen. We do not know how extensive the Sky Islands are. But also, we saw some constructs that we could talk to that were friendly. What are these constructs and how do they relate to the Zonai? Because we've seen Zonai pieces come from some of the constructs. There's this civilization here that is yet to be explored. How do they impact the story? We do not know. But on the note of the story, how will it be told? Will it be done through flashbacks or will it be more current? Is it possible that there are villages and other things in the sky beyond just trees and little enemies? There's still a lot to explore there. But let's go back to the surface. The surface has a number of things that have yet to have been explained. For example, Why do we keep seeing all these holes of malice? They don't look quite like the goops or puddles we saw in Breath of the Wild. They look a little bit darker, perhaps a bit deeper, something we can go into, and malice is sort of emanating from it. How do we interact with these holes or spots? That remains to be seen. I personally speculate that it's related to the underground. I will point out that we have seen these dark lines throughout the sky. It may be that they are connected to these holes on the ground as well. But there are other things about the surface that we haven't really gotten a good understanding of. We see this random puff of pink smoke in the gameplay demonstration. We don't know what that is. We've seen a number of towers throughout the surface of Hyrule that seem to be replacing the Sheikah towers, but they are in different locations. What are those exactly? We've seen a lot of buildings that seem to be under construction. It feels like they're hinting at a lot of construction that we'll be doing and restoration efforts. There is now smoke coming from the stables, from the nostril on the head-shaped roof of them. What does this suggest? Does it mean that we have some sort of blacksmith option now inside the stables? Possibly, or something else we don't know about yet. We also keep seeing these Nazca line-like designs across the surface of Hyrule all throughout. What are those about? What do they link to? Are they related to shrines or something else? Another thing we don't know. We see a Korok that is wearing a backpack that's looking for his friend. This is not how we found Koroks in Breath of the Wild. What is their role? And with that in mind, what about the Deku Tree? The Deku Tree is entirely missing along with Korok Forest. Where did that go? Is it now somewhere high up in the sky? It's something else that Nintendo has yet to tell us about. And while we've seen some hint towards a shrine based off the minimap and that blue little symbol somewhere in the sky it looks like, what are the shrine replacements exactly in Tears of the Kingdom? Will there be replacements or will there be something else altogether? We still don't quite understand what that's going to be. And while we're not 100% sure what direction Nintendo may be headed in when it comes to major dungeons, even in Breath of the Wild they had the Divine Beasts. What's next in Tears of the Kingdom? Are they related to the actual Tears of the Kingdom? Are we going to be collecting 7 different tiers in 7 major dungeons? I think this might be something close to the truth, but we still don't know. How are we going to interact with the Master Sword? Is the Master Sword something we can play with throughout the game from very early on? Or is it something that we're going to be focusing on restoring? Which will be similar to previous Zelda games where there's been some type of effort to restore or power up the Master Sword. Considering story and our goal in the game, as we discussed with the Master Sword in dungeons, what about Princess Zelda? Is she going to be a sage? Is she going to relate to the 7 tiers? Maybe there being 7 sages and this is tied to the dungeons? Is this tied to our effort to restore the Master Sword? What happens to her when she falls down a hole? Is she playable? Is that why they're hiding the underground areas? Or is she someone in the sky? Is she the lady that holds Link's hand in the previous trailer? We still don't know. Mr. Eiji Aonuma has referred to this Hyrule as an unknown Hyrule. We've talked about how there might be underwater exploration in a dedicated video based off what we saw of the Ascend ability and how it changes when we go underwater very briefly. There might be something there. Maybe underwater could be hiding some dungeons or new locations. On that note, what's going on with Death Mountain? Can we now get in there if we clear the Malice? Is there a dungeon in there? What about that giant sky vortex? What's going on with that? We still don't know. Where's Ganon? Does Ganon go back to Hyrule Castle? Are we going to revisit Hyrule Castle again? Or is he elsewhere? And how would we get to Ganon? Is it related to the Tears of the Kingdom? Is it related to these green dials or batteries we see on the side of Link from some pieces of art and some trailers? Also, there are the 4 abilities that we've seen. What can we do with these abilities? Can we upgrade them at some point? To what extent can they be used? There's a lot of mystery there. But also, Nintendo didn't show us switching between the abilities, potentially hiding even more. One of the 4 abilities, Recall, has a rune, but we see that there are other runes from the Tears of the Kingdom OLED and the pin set for the Collector's Edition. It looks like there's more than just these 4 abilities. But let's focus on Recall for a moment here. It reverses time for objects. Could it be used to restore the Master Sword? Could it be used to interact with the ruins in the Sky Islands, perhaps some of those destroyed constructs? Maybe something like Skyward Sword, where you could reverse the history for some of the ancient robots and interact with them. What if Recall can be used on a larger scale to restore not just the Master Sword and some constructs, but maybe entire ruins? Maybe some of the ruins you saw throughout Breath of the Wild can be made modern again with Recall. A possibility, but it's just one of many things I've already pointed out that we just don't know about yet. I've only brought up some different things that Nintendo has yet to tell us about Tears of the Kingdom. I'm sure there's more. I could come up with more, like what about villages, how have they changed? What about the dragons, how do we interact with them? Honestly, I could go on probably endlessly, but I'll keep it there for now because I feel like that's enough to sort of think on about what Nintendo is still hiding about Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe there's something else that none of us can think of that they've got to tell us about this game. And that perhaps might be the most exciting. Anyways, everyone, this is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.